just thrilled today to have on the phone Dr. Ayin Adams. Aloha, Ayin. How are you?
Aloha. Good morning to you, Cindy. Blessings to you.
Well, you're my metaphysical sister here on Maui. I think we first connected in a post office somewhere when I found out. I said hello to you, and we knew each other through radio work. You do so much wonderful work here on Maui, and I've known you in that, but I had no idea. Oh, you were wearing a T-shirt that had something to do with metaphysics on it, and then I realized you were part of the University of Metaphysics as well as me.
That's correct. You're absolutely correct. I had just returned from the University of Metaphysics as your speaker with the late Dr. Paul Leon Masters. I had just returned from Las Vegas, Nevada, when I saw you in Maui. And I had no idea that you were related to Dr. Masters.
And I didn't realize that you had been going to his services. Now, did you know him? Were you living in Las Vegas? Did you know him from Las Vegas?
No, I knew Dr. Masters before Las Vegas. I knew him from my days in New York City. As a metaphysician or as a practitioner, I had begun to study with him in the 80s, if you would believe it or not, after having completed my degree at Howard University in theater, and having returned back home to New York City, studying with a number of great teachers that I've studied with, one being the late Eric Butterworth, Unity Principles, and the late Dr. Stuart Grayson, Science of Mind, First Church of Religious Science, as it was called back in those days, which is the New Thought movement now. And then Dr. Masters. Those were my teachers that I studied with. So I've been studying with Dr. Masters since the 80s.
How did you first find him?
Well, I think through my travels as a speaker, as a motivational, inspirational speaker, traveling around, and through the various conferences, and I end up finding him.
Well, you have an amazing background, and I just really do have to say I think you're a true inspiration. You have so many wonderful books out there. I mean, you also have your own publishing company, and you are a motivational speaker, and you worked on play screenwrites. You've had, 2 movies you worked on. I love the book that you have. In fact, I have it in front of me here, Good Orderly Direction, which is a wonderful book. You also have For Ladies Only, dedicated to the color pink, African Americans in Hawaii, Search for Identity, and there's even more. So you have this wonderful background. So I knew you were, definitely a positive, powerful figure. But I didn't really know that, like I said, this background that you had with metaphysics. And so did you go to some of the classes that the University of Metaphysics had in Las Vegas?
I did. I attended the University of Metaphysics approximately 8 years. I attended back and forth, traveling from New York City to Vegas. Then I think there was an office in Studio City, California, also in the early days.
There was in the old days. That's not many people remember that. That's correct. There was one back in Studio City.
That's correct, and Ventura Boulevard in that area over
That's
there.
Correct.
So I've been a part of the metaphysics for many, many years, having grown up into the New Thought movement back in New York City as a little girl. So I was free to explore the universe, explore my mind. And my parents was okay with that.
Well, I think that's very key. You have had a fascinating life, and I'd like to go a little bit back into your history. You kind of seem like you've always been a spiritual healer You started at the age of 2. You taught yourself how to read and write. Can you give us a little background also how your path unfolded and a little of your history?
Well, it's it's kind of hard to go back when I'm such in a forward movement and moving forward. Sometimes the past can be a blur when I'm living in the now, and you know how that is metaphysically. But just pursuing the passions of what I feel, what I've been experiencing, that's been catapulting me. I've had a lot of great teachers, Cindy, along the way that has been very instrumental in assisting me to what I like to call uncover or discover or rediscover some of the mystical things to not only to myself but to the universe. I know Dr. Masters like to look at it as the mystical oneness, or which is the oneness with God. And I think that's the key to everything. That's what I've learned from him. One of the most important things is the mystical oneness, and I find that not understanding what the word was, however, but knowing that it was just a part of my being. And I think that was just a part of my path from a very early on little girl, and just taking that and going with that, running with that. I lived a very storied life coming from New York City.
Very different than Maui, that's for sure. And I know that you're a wonderful poet, and you do fantastic readings, and you've done many events here on Maui, celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King's life and his dream. You put on lovely events for the African American community here, so you're very dedicated and have really developed that here, I know, on Maui and in other places as well. And your poetry, when did you start writing poetry? Because I love your poetry, Ayin.
Well, thank you so much. I started writing poetry at a very early age. As soon as I can begin to write, I think maybe around age 3 or 4.
Really?
My earliest recollections of being published was at age 6. As a little girl, I would take my allowance and buy construction paper and write my poetry on paper. And then I would travel down to the store on the corner and sell my poetry for 25 cents to the passerbys on the street, Cindy.
I never knew that. That is good. Other people were selling lemonade and you were selling your poetry.
Yes, I was selling poetry at 25 cents a poem. And if I had repeat customers, I would go up to 50 cents. And that told me that I was doing well because the poems were selling out. And so each time the poem sold out, I would have to do another original, but the price went up to 50 cents.
You were making more money than I was with my poetry at the age of 6. That's. Do you remember what you would write about?
I did. I also remember that my cash register was a grits box. Mother had finished cooking grits, and that would be my cash register. I would write lots of love poems, and I would write spiritual poems based on the readings of the Psalms out of the Bible. And that was how I saw things through my little 6-year-old eyes. I saw the world as perfect. I saw the world as what I read in the scriptures in the Psalms. And so I would paint pictures of a world like that, and I would write of love poems and love stories.
Wow, that is amazing. So from there, I know you are wonderful at speaking. You're a wonderful spoken word artist. You've spoken all around and do many services and have held many services. When did you begin actually getting out there and speaking some of these poems?
Well, again, it started at a very early age in school. So I would say at the first time when I entered school, that was at the same time, that the teachers noticed my extraordinary abilities and began to put me into plays, and I had begun to audition for commercials in New York City and performances of that sort. So I come from the theater background of stage and television out of New York City as a little girl.
Did you actually get involved in any of the theater and the work there in New York?
Yes, I did, yes. I am a veteran actress, a former child star of stage and television, of the sitcoms of the 70s and 80s, and that's where I began. I went to the Performing Arts School, where I've studied with some of the top teachers and some of the actresses and actors that are famous here today, and from then on, having gained a scholarship to attend Howard University for theater. At the age of 15, I left home in New York City as a small girl, as a teenager, heading out to a new country, a new world, and to study theater. Roxy Roker, Lenny Kravitz's mom, television show The Jefferson, the Matrix, Lawrence Fishburne, his mother, those were my teachers. And Diane Carroll from the television show Corey back in the late 60s. So we all grew up in New York City, and we were all connected in our community. We lived in the community together.
How wonderful.
And so my background, which is never asked, so this is the first time I'm really sharing some of it.
Yeah.
So that's where the voice comes from. It's a part of my training. So I was trained at some of the prestigious schools in New York City for theater. And traveling with theater production companies. We traveled a lot. As a little girl, I had a chaperone. One of my siblings would travel with me when my parents were working. And so those were my chaperones that would travel with me as a child star.
Well, I have to say you have confused sometimes and mistaken for Whoopi Goldberg. And that has happened before, right?
Very few times, more few times than often, you know.
I sense that you have in you this unbelievable power and confidence, unbelievable strength and that gives you that. It comes across. It comes across when you speak your beautiful poetry and words. I don't hear it in many people, and I do a lot of, lots of radio and lots of talking, but you carry this strength in your voice. I don't know if I know this is putting you on totally by surprise, taking you by surprise, but I don't know if you'd like to read or speak one of your poems, because something comes through you that's so strong, Ayin, when you speak.
Well, we look at the chakras, we look at the body, we look at the body being energy, the body being light, the stardust beauties that we are. And so everything goes back to that originates from that, which is the power, which is the energy that we all have within us. Some are good at articulating, some are good at expressing or the pressing out of their power. And the more that I can conceive of, the more that I can express or release that, which is what I like to call, we all have our own inner imprisoned splendor. So it's in there, but if we're not utilizing, then it's not coming out. But we all have that same gift.
Well, we all have it, but we certainly can't all speak it as well as you speak it, Ayin. When did you begin? I know you've spoken here. You did an Easter service up at the Temple of Peace here on Maui just a week ago. It's hard to believe it was just a week ago that was Easter. I know you spoke sometimes at the university when Dr. Masters had his university in Las Vegas. And you have been able to hold quite a few wonderful services. I'm kind of wondering if you want to talk about what you talked about for resurrection last Sunday at Temple of Peace.
Well, I did a beautiful